Alright, it's confirmed. I prefer traveling in Germany over France.
Sacre what?
I know, quelle horreur. How could anyone prefer traveling in Germany over France? I mean, it's I'm gonna tell you how, and by the end of this video, you might have Germany leapfrogging France on your travel wish list. But before we get into it, a little context. Hi, in case you're new here, I'm Joe Bauer, an American German who's been traveling, eating, and face-planting on trails all around Germany and beyond for the past 8 years. If you're interested in more videos featuring some of my adventures around Germany and the rest of Europe, I've got them right here on my channel. From running an FKT around the Ringbahn in Berlin to torturing myself in the mountains of a North Macedonian ultramarathon. I share that not just to shamelessly plug my other stuff that takes me much longer to edit, but because it tells you what kind of traveler I am. I want trails, lots of them. I'm less interested in seeing the obvious tourist favorites. I didn't even see the Eiffel Tower until my 3rd or 4th visit to Paris, and I only saw it because I needed to go on a run, and I thought running by the thing would be as good a reason as any to finally see it up close. Please don't mistake anything in this video as France bashing or travel snobbery. Some people want to see the Eiffel Tower. Statistically, it is one of the most, if not the most popular attractions in all of France, and getting to see it in the flesh, or in the iron I suppose, might be the trip of a lifetime. If that's you, then have at it! The Eiffel Tower isn't in Germany, so book that trip to Paris, throw on your Moulin Rouge fishnets, and go nuts. But if you're not as motivated by planning your trip around one cultural attraction, then you might prefer Germany, especially if you're like me, someone who happens to be vegetarian and is always on the hunt for new trails to run or hike. First off, the food. A lot of people say they want to go to France for the food, but I question how much people around the world actually know about French food. Most imagine a baguette, some cheese, and a glass of wine. Lovely, perfectly lovely. But in practice, a lot of French food is meat on butter on meat on butter, sometimes fish. Finding delicious vegetarian options is not so easy in France, especially the further south and more rural you get. I often end up looking up international restaurants that are more likely to offer vegetarian options because it's just part of that cuisine, like, say, a Lebanese falafel plate. Rarely am I able to go find something that's irrefutably French and vegetarian. Even ratatouille was a rarity. Rata-freaking-touille! Germany, on the other hand, is much easier to travel around as a vegan or vegetarian, especially when you're in a city like Berlin, a place I've argued is the most vegetarian-friendly city in all of Europe. Even in the countryside, you'll generally find salads, good ones, not spiteful ones, and fresh pasta dishes with regional ingredients like the beloved Pfefferling mushroom. Yes, stereotypical German food is very heavy on the meats. It's kind of like that Arby's commercial with the obnoxious tagline, "We have the meats." I mean, really, is your writer an insecure high school jock or something? Except instead of Arby's, it's Deutschland. If that's your thing, Deutschland indeed has, for better or worse, the meats. But they also have options for those of us who prefer our little piggies to merrily cry wee 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 all the way home. I've hiked to many a trailside Hütte in Germany, and I've never struggled to find vegetarian options. But in France, I've always had to research in advance or remind the hotel kitchen staff, only to most recently be served a small plate of lightly sautéed vegetables with no seasoning. A little less lovely than the baguette with wine and cheese, to say the least. Now let's talk about why you might prefer traveling to Germany over France if you're motivated by hiking and trail running. Let me preempt the comments. Yes, France has incredible landscapes and long-distance hiking trails. The views might even beat what Germany has to offer if you prefer the Pyrenees or rolling hills with lavender fields and rocky coves with views of the Mediterranean. The problem is, from my experience, the trails are poorly marked. So instead of enjoying the trail, you're constantly backtracking or second-guessing yourself, looking at your GPX route on your watch, wondering where in all of God's green goodness that freaking turn was supposed to be. An anecdote. Last week I was in southern France at a rural hotel. The cultural differences are pretty obvious from the get-go. In France, everyone shows up to breakfast dressed better than I can pull off at a wedding. In Germany, they'd be in their hiking boots with Wanderstocke, a backpack, and a bucket hat. After breakfast, I set off on some local trails. A few kilometers in, I was merrily skipping along a rocky yet runnable trail up to the remains of an abandoned stone building, swallowed up by the forest. From there wasn't any indication of where to go. I followed my route as best as possible and started climbing up the cliffside. But there was no sign, no marker, and eventually anything resembling a trail just stopped. So I bailed. I tried following another trail I passed earlier, no sign, no marker, but hey, it wasn't overrun with brush. And then suddenly, little flags started popping up, painted on the side of stones and trees, only to once again disappear and lead to a dead end. When I put this opinion out there on Threads, someone suggested I was simply unfamiliar with the color system used for waymarking trails like the GR. I suppose I would be unfamiliar with that, but this wasn't the GR. These were regional trails. And Germany has long-distance hiking trails that are incredibly well marked with plenty of information available online for GPX tracks and the like, but they also give the same love and care to smaller regional trails. Almost any village in Germany will have signs in the town center pointing to different trails and indicating what the marker will look like. Usually I do download a GPX track to be safe, but honestly I'd have to try to get lost on a German hiking trail. Another French person responded saying that they grew up with zero waymarking and prefer it that way. That's fine. I don't mind getting lost on a trail, like within reason. But I'm speaking primarily to overseas travelers like Americans who already suffer from criminally low vacation time and maybe don't have the time or the confidence to get lost on a trail in a foreign country where they don't speak the language. On that linguistic note, English is much more widely spoken in Germany than in France. Like anywhere else, learning some of the local language will go a long way in rural corners of the country. But in an emergency, you'll likely find someone who can speak English. Less so in rural France, especially in the south. Bon chance with the anglais there. Okay, sidebar, I'm all about language learning and coming prepared with some basics when traveling anywhere as even just a common courtesy to be a good guest. But the Duolingo owl isn't going to save you when you're in a jam. So if you want to experience some hiking or trail running in Europe with relative ease, relative because, the German Alps are still the Alps even if they are well marked, then you might prefer traveling in Germany over France. Not to mention, the rail system in some parts of Germany is tailor-made for long-distance hiking, especially in the Mosel and Rhineland, where you can easily hike along a long-distance hiking trail for a number of stages and take the train back to your hotel or wherever you started. Now, I've already noticed that some people, for whatever reason, take it personally when I simply say that my opinion, just me, prefer traveling in Germany over France. Expressing an opinion on the internet is always a perilous thing. Someone will always be there to tell you that your opinion is wrong. So let me wrap this up by saying, I love traveling in France. Running around Alsace was, God, I can't believe this is the word that comes to mind, but hell, I'll roll with it. Heavenly. It was heavenly. I've just come to prefer one over the other. At the end of the day, it's kind of like arguing LeBron versus Jordan. Ultimately, who cares? They're both once-in-a-generation phenoms. Whether you end up in France or Germany, there are certainly worse places to be. But if you do want to know more about traveling around Germany, I've got a whole playlist dedicated to it on my channel, from jumping off a mountain in Allgäu to running around one of the most beautiful villages on the entire continent. And hey, if I've persuaded you to plan a trip to the Deutschland, I can help you plan that trip. I offer German and even Europe trip planning consultation to help get you off the beaten path and make the most of your time overseas. I'll leave a link to that in the description below, but in the meantime, do all the usual YouTube stuff, like, comment, subscribe, sacrifice your son. Wait, no, that was God, not YouTube. And we'll see you next time.